All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about a true giant of tango, Osvaldo Fresedo. But we're not just talking about his music in general. We're going to deconstruct a puzzle, a real paradox, that's hidden inside one of his most famous songs. And trust me, it's a story that might just change everything you think you know about him.
So this whole mystery? It all comes down to one single iconic tango, Tigre viejo. To really get what's going on, you have to hear just how different this one song can sound, depending on who's playing it.
So, on the one hand, you've got Elvino Vardaro's version from 1933. It's considered an absolute masterpiece. It's wild, it's energetic, almost untamed. And then, just a year later, Fresedo records his take. It's famous for sure, but it sounds like it's from another planet.
And that brings us to this just absolutely brutal critique. I mean, listen to this quote. One critic said Fresedo's version of this powerhouse tango wasn't just tame, but emasculated. Wow, that's a heavy word, and pretty shocking when you're talking about a legend of the genre.
So, which is it? Is that criticism on the money, or is there a completely different way to hear this song? Could it possibly be one of the most danceable tangos ever made? That right there, that's the question we're going to dig into.
To find the answer, first we have to understand the image everyone has of Fresedo, the myth that's been built around him for the better part of a century.
First off, just the sheer scale of his work is mind-boggling. We're talking more than 1,250 recordings. The guy wasn't just a musician, he was practically an institution.
And his career wasn't just a flash in the pan. We're talking 63 years of professionally making music. Just let that sink in. He was a defining voice for multiple generations of tango lovers. And this is how people usually describe his sound. It's the Fresedo everyone thinks they know, right? Refined, super smooth, full of these soft, delicate touches and elegant piano parts. This was music made for a very specific, high society audience. And that's what cemented his reputation. Osvaldo Fresedo became the sound of those fancy, aristocratic ballrooms. He was the undisputed king of a sweet, romantic, super polished style of tango. So, there you have it. That's the myth.
But that's only half the story. Not even. It's time to pull back the curtain and find out who the real man was and where he actually came from.
And this is the key. You've got the myth that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. But the reality? His dad was a businessman, sure, but when he was 10, the family moved to La Paternal, a humble, working-class neighborhood. We're talking a world away from the high society salons.
And get this, his nickname wasn't some fancy title like the aristocrat. Nope. His real earned nickname on the street was El Pibe de la Paternal, the kid from La Paternal. That completely grounds him in the suburbs, in the very heart of where tango was bubbling up.
This timeline really tells the story. He didn't just appear in the fancy ballrooms one day. He worked his way up through local cafes, made recordings that literally changed the course of tango, and got so big that at one point he was running 5 different orchestras at the same time. This was a man of the people who ended up conquering the whole city.
Okay, so with that new perspective on who he was, let's circle back to our problem song, Tigre viejo, because now we can see why it's such a fascinating oddball in his huge body of work.
So, get this. In the decade between 1931 and 1941, which was a peak creative time for him, guess how many instrumental tangos he recorded? Just 11. That's it. He was almost completely focused on songs with singers.
And when you actually look at the list, you can see what an outlier Tigre viejo really is. I mean, look at that 5-year gap right after it. For him to record an instrumental during this period was a big deal. It was a rare and very deliberate choice. And now, here's the other side of the story. This is the counter-argument. It comes from the perspective of a DJ, someone who plays this music for dancers night after night. And they say, yeah, other versions exist, but Fresedo's, his is hands down the most danceable.
And here's the proof you can hear for yourself. If you listen really closely to his version, right around the 19-second mark, there's this bold, almost electric-sounding violin note that just jumps out at you. That's not tame, that's not effeminate, that is a playful, confident, signature Fresedo move.
So now we've got to put it all together. How do we square these two things? How do we reconcile these two completely different worlds that seem to exist inside this one artist?
Let's ask that question one more time, but now with all the pieces on the table. Was he the polished aristocrat? Or was he the man of the suburbs,
the kid from La Pater. You've got the sweet, refined king of tango on one side, and on the other, the playful, bold kid from the suburbs who created this wildly danceable music. How can one person possibly be both?
And the answer is, he was both. He wasn't one or the other. He presented the deep message of the suburbs, but he did it with a refined taste. He was a master of holding that contradiction, of blending the grit of the street with the elegance of the salon, and that's where his genius really was.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. This whole story about Fresedo and Tigre Viejo, it isn't just about tango. It's a great reminder to always question the simple stories we get told. And it makes you wonder, what other details, what other truths do we miss out on when we just don't listen closer?